In this video, we are going to begin our discussion of equations. So the two essential questions in this video we are going to answer are what is an equation and what is a solution to an equation. So first of all, what is an equation? An equation is a math sentence that states that two expressions are equal. Now, in our last video series, we talked about expressions, and expressions did not have equal signs, and now we're going to introduce the equal sign. And the equal sign tells us that the two expressions on either side of the equal sign are the same thing. So I know it's a basic thing, but a lot of us get confused when it comes to equations, and a lot of us think of an equation as a left to right sentence, so we just read it from left to right, when in reality there are two sides to an equation, and that's how you have to think of an equation, as two expressions. So here is a numerical expression of 4, and on the right side of the equal sign is a numerical expression 2 plus 2. The equal sign simply says that the things on both sides of this equal sign are the same thing. So what's on the left side of the equal sign is the same as what's on the right side of the equal sign. So there are two sides to an equation, the left side of the equation and the right side of the equation. And the equal sign says that the two things on either side are the same thing. So we don't really read an equation, I guess, mathematically from left to right. We kind of think of it as a dividing line that has something on the left and something on the right. So we can see that each one of these equations has something on both sides of it, and those two things are equivalent to each other. So 4 is obviously the same thing as 2 plus 2. 9 plus 1 is the same thing as 5 plus 5. 20 minus 15 is the same thing as 10 plus 5. And then here we'll get some algebraic equations going on where we know that x plus 5 is the same thing as 9. And later on, we're going to talk about what solutions are and what value of x does make that true. And then here we have 17 plus 1 is the same thing as 3 times b minus 5. And 12 is the same thing as y divided by 9. So that's basic definition of an equation and examples of equations. There's two sides to an equation. It's not like order of operations where you're just going left to right type of thing. So what is a solution to an equation? A solution to an equation is the value of the variable that makes the equation true. So remember, a variable is just an unknown or something that's always changing. So what is the solution to this equation? X plus 5 equals 7. Well, we just said that an equation says that these two expressions are the same thing. So x plus 5 has to be the same thing as 7. So what value of x would make this left side of the equation equal to 7? Well, hopefully you can tell that x has to be 2. If x is 2, then if we evaluate this like we've done before, we replace x with 2, and 2 plus 5 is equal to 7, and that is a true statement. So the value 2 makes it true, and notice that only 2 makes this true. No other value of x makes this true. So there's only one number that makes this equation true, and that one number is called the solution. So there's only one number that makes this equation true. So now let's go through and see if we can determine the solutions to these equations. So here we have an equation, x plus 12 equals 6. So if I divide this here at the equal sign, x plus 12 has to be the same thing as 6. So which of these values of x would make this true? Well, if x was 6, we would put 6 in for x. 6 plus 12 is 18. That is not equal to 6, so this is not a solution. If x is 18, if we put 18 in for x, 18 plus 12 is 30. That is not equal to 6. That is not a solution to this equation. If x equals -6, -6 plus 12 is 6. So that does make it equal to 6. So that's the solution right there. So we don't even need to check the last one because we know that only one number makes this true. But if you do put -18 in there, you would get -6, which is not equal to 6. So -6 is the solution, or x equals -6 is the solution to this equation, because the value -6 plus 12 is equal to 6. That makes that true. Next one, 15 minus b equals 8. What value of b makes this equation true? If we put 7 in for b, 15 minus 7 is 8. So we have found our solution. 15 minus 7 is the same thing as 8. So b equals 7 is the solution to this equation. If you put -7 in for this, you get 22, which is not 8. If you put 23 in, you get -8, which is not 8. And if you put -23 in, you get 38, which is not 8. So none of those other numbers work. And again, we know only one number makes that equation true. Here we have 5 times c equals 20. Find the solution. If c is 100, 5 times 100 is 500, and that is not 20. If we have 3, 5 times 3 is 15, which is not 20. If c equals 4, 5 times 4 is 20. That is the solution. 5 times 4 is equal to 20. That is the solution to the equation. And then the last one, if you put -4 in there, you get -20, which is not 20. So that one is not a solution either. So again, we're finding the value that makes the statement true. A couple more. Determine which value is a solution to the equation. H plus 2.5 equals 8. Here we're getting some rational numbers involved. So if we put 6.5 in, 6.5 plus 2.5 is 9, which is not equal to 8. So H must equal 5.5 here. 5.5 plus 2.5 is 8. That does check out. That is our solution. 5.5 plus 2.5 is equal to 8. That's our solution. So H has to be 5.5. Here, n divided by 5.5 equals -2.3. And here we have two choices. It's either -12.5 or +12.5. Well, if you just remember your rules for division, you know that a negative divided by a positive is going to be a negative, and a positive divided by a positive is not going to be negative. So I know that it can't be 12.65 because that's a positive number, and it's not going to get a negative number when I divide. So that kind of tips me off here. That's going to be actually +2.3. When I divide -12.65 by 5.5, I get -2.3. So this one is going to be our solution because a -12.65 divided by a +5.5 is -2.3. So there's our solution. And then lastly, -3/4 times x equals 12. I know x has to be negative, but both of my options here are negative, so I'm going to have to test these. -3/4 times -9 is a +6 3/4, so that is not my solution. That means x equals -16, and if I check that, -3/4 times -16 is a +12. So there is my solution. -3/4 times -16 is +12, and that's the solution. So here we're just simply talking about what are solutions to equations and determining if a value is a solution to an equation.